Wow. Wow. To Jasmine.
Hello.
Wow. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here with you today.
Thank you very much. I feel like it's an amazing opportunity to have you on a book show podcast, Godian Cross. And I must say that it's a real opportunity and privilege to have you talk about your book and your journey into authorship and significance of reading.
Absolutely. Absolutely. This is one of my favorite things to talk about.
Wow, wow. So let's go. Well, you're welcome to the podcast, the one student, one book, one author mantra. The podcast that is designed to help use your good office and authority as an author to inspire and motivate a committed reader out of every global person. Well, we like you to tell us about author Jasmine Cochran. How do I get to say your surname?
I'm sorry, I missed that. How do you get to see what?
How do I get to pronounce your surname,
Surname.
Jasmine?
It is
Yeah.
Cochran. Jasmine Cochran is my name. Yes.
Cochran. Cochran. So I know you're an amazing teacher. What else do I need to know about you? Tell us about you.
Let's see. There's lots to know.
Ah,
I was raised here in the United States in Mississippi, but I lived overseas in China for 5 years with my family. That was a really
wow.
cool experience with my husband and two
Wow.
daughters. We moved to China because we felt like it. We lived there for 5 years until we came back to the United States 3 years ago. I've also
Wow.
traveled to the motherland. I've been to Sierra Leone, and I've wanted to live in Africa my entire life. So maybe that will happen someday, just not today.
Wow. 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 Amazing. Amazing. So let's talk about your early childhood.
Okay.
Were you born in this family where reading was the order of the day? Where and when can recall you becoming passionate about reading? Like when you choose to
You
keep it
know
in.
what? I was surrounded by brilliant people who understood how important it was to be able to read and write, and I was fortunate to have that. My mother was an assistant teacher. My father, in my very young years, was a welder, but then he ended up having a job at NASA and he worked on rocket ships. And that is
Wow.
where he retired. And in between that time of him being a welder and becoming a component technician at NASA, he ended
Wow.
up being on the school board in our community. This is also where he grew up. They asked
Wow.
him if he would be part of the school board, and he said yes. So he was on the school board for 10 years. He was the president
Wow.
twice. He, at that time, was the
Wow.
only person they had asked to serve as president twice. And he was the first
Wow.
Black person on that school board. And so my
Wow.
parents came from difficult backgrounds and childhoods, and they did not have the kind of support that they provided for us. And so
Wow.
when they were raising us, they knew that education had to be the foundation. It was a foundational value and truth for our family. And so when I went
Mm.
to preschool, I had this incredible teacher for preschool, and I had great teachers growing up. And I remember writing things in kindergarten and the first grade, and my mom would keep those things that I wrote and she would put them in a plastic bucket. And so we still have them.
Wow.
So from a
Wow.
very young age, I knew that I wanted to write. I didn't have all the details when I was 7 years old, but I knew that it was something that I loved. I did love to read, and we didn't have we didn't have what kids have today. We did not
Yeah.
have cell phones and iPads and computers all over the place. I was born in 1983. So what we
Wow.
had was a television that sat on the floor and you had to get up
Yeah.
and go change the channel on the television, and we all had to
Yeah.
share a TV. And so if there was somebody watching something on TV that you did not want to watch, you either had to go outside and play or you went to
Yeah.
go read. And
Yeah.
there was a lot of opportunity to read. Sometimes when we would get in trouble, we would be forced to go read the encyclopedia. Sometimes, just
Amazing.
yeah, sometimes just for fun, we would go read the
Yeah.
encyclopedia or the dictionary. So, reading
Yeah.
was always around us and it was very valued. And
Yeah.
we didn't have all the distractions that people have today. And at night, our parents would read to us before we went to bed. There were
Wow.
many
Wow.
times, where books were just around. So it was an integral part of my childhood to have books around and to read a lot.
Wow. Wow. Amazing. Amazing. Wow. It seems you had everything going on well and so awesome for you while growing up. A very big thanks to mom and dad for making it so comfortable and fun, 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 fun for you.
Incredible parents. I have the
Wow.
most incredible
Wow.
parents. Yes.
Wow. So, to Jasmine, let's talk about your writing career. Obviously, from your story, you've been this avid and elliptical reader, and you've always been a writer. A writer. When did you have your first publications? Like when it was obvious that the golden pen was now out.
Oh man, that's a really good question. I don't really know. I don't really know. I know that I was always writing something. If it wasn't for class, if it wasn't for school, then somebody else had something that they needed me to look over, or somebody wanted me to write something for the paper, or somebody wanted me to write a proposal for something. So there was
Yeah.
always some kind of writing going on. And then my freshman year of college, my very first major was journalism. So I was going
Yeah.
to somehow be involved in media. And that
Wow.
didn't last very long because the director of the journalism school at my college, I just wasn't very impressed by him. He was very negative, and the way that he made media look as a career was not something that I wanted to do. I didn't always want to be in people's business. I didn't want to be exposing people's personal lives. And so I
Yeah.
decided to change my major from journalism to English. I became an English
Wow.
major and I wasn't
Wow.
sure what I was going to do with it. At the time, I thought that I would go to law school and become an attorney. And then that did not
Yeah.
happen. And so my
Wow.
life has just been so wild. It has not been
Wow.
a linear path. I did not wake up one day and decide that I wanted to have a certain career and then pursue that career and stay in that career. I've
Yeah.
done many different things. And
Wow.
part of that has been writing. So even now, and for several years, I have been a ghostwriter, an editor,
Mm.
and a speechwriter.
Wow.
So I've helped people get about
So,
40 books out
you
there.
you you are also into acting. Are you on the screen?
No, not at all. No.
Just script writing.
Correct. Yes. I've helped authors get about 40 books out of their heads and onto the paper and published. And that's
Wow, that's
exciting.
amazing. Wow,
I've written
amazing.
really cool speeches for some really amazing people. That's always a lot of
Wow,
fun. And speaking is my favorite thing to do. That is
wow,
actually what I'm doing right now. So I've always
yeah,
wanted to be a public
yeah,
speaker. And
wow,
I've created a program where I do public speaking, I do keynotes and run workshops for students.
yeah,
And I've done it for corporations, I've done it for schools, I've done it for the consulate general in Guangzhou. That was really exciting. And
Wow.
I've spoken on three different continents: the United States,
Wow.
Africa,
Wow.
and Asia. So that right now is my focus, to expand my speaking
Wow.
opportunities, because speaking is truly my favorite thing to do.
Wow. Amazing. Amazing. So, can I ask you about your book? What's your book about? How many have you published so
Sure.
far?
So my own personal books, I have only published two. And the
Okay.
one that I recently published in November is called Keep Waking Up in the Morning,
Mm,
Mourning,
mm,
because
mm.
it is about dealing with the death of my father. So, one
Wow.
thing that he used to say to us when we were growing up, he would never tell us to wait until we got older to understand something, or he wouldn't say, I'll explain it to you when you get older. What he would say is, just keep waking up in the morning. You'll understand one day. Just keep waking up in the morning. And so
Yeah.
when he died, it was terrible because I adored him. We had a very close relationship. And
Wow.
like I said, we came back from China when I heard he was sick. There was no way that I could be on the other side of the world with him with cancer. So we
Yeah.
came back and I was taking care of him. My mother and I were looking after him. And when he died, it was like somebody just turned the sun off. It was just dark, and I've never experienced sadness like that in my entire life. And after a few
Wow.
months, I came to the conclusion that the only way to keep going was to just keep waking up and taking it day by day and dealing with grief as it is. And so when I was thinking about the title for this book, I wanted to name it after something that he said a lot, and I was thinking of all the different quotes, that came from him, and
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
keep waking up in the morning kept popping in my head, but it wasn't quite it, and then it hit me. Oh, mourning, like as in grief, and put the U in there,
Yeah.
and that's what the book
Yeah.
is. So keep waking up each day and dealing with this pain, and eventually the pain won't be so terrible and the memories will become positive and happy instead of just a catalyst for deep dark depression like it is at the beginning of losing someone.
Wow. Wow. So you wrote to deal with your grief. So
Yes,
writing is like therapy for you. Amazing.
absolutely.
Okay, that's
Absolutely.
mine. Amazing. Amazing. So I like to ask, who would be your target audience? Obviously, every person goes through grief every other time. Every
Hmm.
person always has a partner, a loved one. Every person. I think I have my own grief. I lost two senior, my classmates, and one of my
Hmm.
seniors in high school. So I've been also seeing myself thinking about these folk, like they are all had beautiful and amazing future, but they
Hmm.
did not wake up. So tell us, who did you write your books for? Who is
The target audience really is exactly what you said. Anybody who has lost someone, and
yeah,
more specifically, adult children who have lost a parent. Because
yeah,
I think that when we think about the circle of life, people are supposed to get
yeah,
old and they're supposed to die, and they're supposed to die before their children. And I think that
yeah,
with that assumption and that the natural piece that comes to that, I think that we subconsciously believe that that makes dealing with that death a little easier, but it doesn't. It doesn't make it
yeah,
easier. Just because it
yeah,
is what we would call the natural progression doesn't
yeah.
mean that that pain isn't as deep as it would be otherwise. And so I think that it's important for adults to have that space and opportunity to say, hey, you know what? I'm 30 years old, 40 years old, 50 years old, I'm 80 years old, and I just lost my parent and it hurts and I miss
It
them.
hurts.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
so that would be, I would say, a more focused audience or maybe even a secondary audience, but really anybody who's lost someone, I have had so many interactions with people who read the
Yeah.
book and who came back and told me all the different reasons why it was helpful for them. And these are people who have lost people in a myriad of
Yeah.
ways, not just
Yeah.
reflective of my age and my father's age and our story, but their own stories. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's just been really beautiful to hear how people are experiencing the book. And I think that it's accomplishing the goal that I had for it as I was writing it. And when I do have to say this, when I started writing that book, it was not the intention was not what it ended up being. So,
Wow.
my father and I were writing it together. He loved stories. He cared very
Wow.
much about the family tree and ancestry and about oral
Wow.
tradition. And so when I was
Wow.
young, he always said, "Hey, it is important for you to go and interview your grandparents, interview your aunts and your uncles, interview the people who are older than you so that you know where you came
Wow.
from." So when I came
Yeah.
home to help take care of him in his own illness, I said, "Hey, we're going to write a book about you." And I started to interview him, and we started to write a book about him, and then he died. And so I knew that I had to finish it. I couldn't just let it sit there. And it took a while. It took a few months for me to be able to open it back up. And then I had to change a lot of things about it and decide on a new direction, a new trajectory
Wow.
for it. And it ended up being this collection of stories that it
Wow.
is now, and the lessons in those stories that are helping me to deal with his not being here anymore. So that
Wow.
is how the book came to be.
Wow. Author Jasmine, thank you for sharing your amazing life and experiential knowledge with your father and your family tree, your travels, and all of your experiences with grief. Thank you for
Mhm.
sharing the story with us. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Wow, wow. Well, yeah, well, we have this point on the show where you would have to name 10 books that would actually stay with you. I know that you're a very strong, avid, and elliptical reader, and I'm
Mhm.
sure that this would be very easy for you. What do you
Yeah,
think? Are you ready?
I'm ready. I'm
But
ready.
before you take that challenge, I'd like you to tell us where we can find your books.
Yes, on Amazon, if you just type in Jasmine Cochran, keep waking up in the morning, Mourning, it will pop right up. Also on my website, jasminecochran.com. That is where you can keep up with all the good stuff that I have going on.
Wow, amazing, amazing. Wow, we get to the point in the show. Author Jasmine will be taking us to our library and will be keeping us engrossed with the amazing thing that made much sense or click for her. Well, Author Jasmine, I'm sure you're ready.
All right, I'm ready if you are for the 10 books. Here we go. My
Okay,
favorite. Oh, go ahead.
okay. Thank you. I love your spirit. I love your inner. But I was just going to say that I'll be counting it on you. So you're allowed to call the name of the book and the author, and you're also allowed to talk about the book, the ones that really click.
Got it. Okay.
Oh,
All right.
wow.
My favorite. I'm hello. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay, go on. I got you. I got you.
Okay. Here we go. My favorite book ever is the autobiography of Malcolm X. I love
Mm,
Malcolm X.
yeah.
I love
Good.
everything about him. I love how raw and honest he was about his life. I love how we got to see him transition from one person to another person to another person. And one thing that he said was, and this is a paraphrase, but he said that The mark of intelligence is to be able to change your mindset and your beliefs when you come across new information that warrants that. And I agree. So I love Malcolm X. That's my favorite. Number two, Four Agreements. The
Wow.
Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz. Love that book. It's
Mm.
incredible. It is four promises that you make to yourself so that you can
Wow.
have an easier, better, more fulfilled life. And it is amazing. It's a very short read, not like Malcolm X, and very powerful.
Yeah,
Um,
I read Malcolm X, and it was a very long read, but I was
yes,
engrossed.
yes. And it doesn't, when you're done, it doesn't feel like it took that long to read, but it
Oh,
is a thick book. So the next one, this is another huge one. It's even bigger than Malcolm X. The People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. I love this book because
wow, amazing. We have to.
Howard Zinn, Zinn, is his last name. And I love this book because it tells you stories that you're not going to hear in most other places. It tells you about how racism came to be in the United States of America. It tells you about what we had before racism and why the
Wow,
powers that be created it. It tells you about all
wow,
of the different fights and revolutions that happened on American soil and the government killing these people because we don't have the freedom that people say that we have in this country. Howard Zinn
wow,
died way too early. I wish that he was still around so that we can hear his thoughts on the things that have happened over the past couple of decades here in the United
yeah,
States. But that book is amazing. A People's History of the United States by Howard Zinn. It is phenomenal.
wow,
I feel like it
wow,
should be required reading for all history classes. So that's what I pick.
wow,
Number four.
amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Number four. Yeah,
number,
you're going.
number four, The Grapes of Wrath by John Steinbeck. John Steinbeck is brilliant. And this is a novel, and it is about the Great Depression. And it's just phenomenal. It's just such a great book. And I love the different writing styles that Steinbeck employs in this book. This is about a poor white family, which a lot of the time you don't hear about poor white families in
Sure.
literature unless you're looking for it. And so I think that it's an important book it's just to me a reflection of what Howard Zinn was talking about in the previous book that I talked
Yeah,
about. And a lot of the time in the United States, we separate things strictly by race when really what we
yeah.
have a lot of the time is a class issue. And so the
Wow,
Grapes of Wrath, I think,
wow,
does a really good job
wow,
of highlighting that. So yeah.
wow. You broke my heart.
Because we certainly
Wow.
have a race issue, and I don't want people to get that confused. We do.
Yeah.
But we also have a class issue. And I think that oftentimes those two issues
Yeah.
become convoluted. So, yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
All right. I'm
Amazing.
going to go
Go
kind of fast through the other ones.
on.
So,
Okay. Go on.
their eyes
Go
were
on.
watching. Okay. Their eyes were watching God by Zora Neale Hurston. Zora Neale Hurston is a master of language and storytelling. I read this in college because, again, I was an English major, and I very much appreciated the professor who included Zora Neale Hurston in the syllabus because when you're an English major, you don't spend a lot of time on Black American authorship, and so I was grateful for that professor who included
Wow.
Zora Neale Hurston, and she's brilliant.
Wow. Me.
The next one, a friend of
That
mine
that
from
would be
New
number that would be number six.
No, that was five. Their eyes are watching God was five.
Okay. The
Yes.
next one will be number six.
Yes. Number six, my friend from New
Yeah.
Zealand. When I lived in China, I had a friend from New Zealand, and she and I would recommend books and music to each other all the time. It
Wow.
was a very special relationship because she read a lot and she listened to a lot of different kinds of music. And so we were able to share our favorite reads and new music and our favorite music with each other and talk about it. And
Wow.
so she told me about this book called Ruby, and it is
Ruby.
amazing. Ruby.
Wow.
I usually do not read a lot of fiction, but Ruby
Wow.
was incredible. It reminded me of Beloved a lot, and it's just beautifully written. It is about a Cajun woman. I am from the deep south, close to New Orleans, and so it really spoke to me, and it was just awesome. I loved it. It did not get like huge acclaim, but I thought that it was brilliant. So yes, I loved it. But it was a bestseller apparently. So yeah, shout out
Wow.
to Ruby.
Wow.
So
That's
number
amazing. With just three to go, I'm going to see your.
okay. So I will say Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto. John Taylor Gatto was the teacher of the year in New York, if I'm not mistaken, two or three times. Brilliant teacher who was fed up with the American education system. And so he wrote this book called Dumbing Us Down, talking about how the American education system was actually making us dumber.
Mm.
And it is
So,
brilliant. And
so
I
it,
agree with it.
the education system are always trying to teach us what to believe, what to think, to act, and was that what all of that great read was about? I'd like you to
Well,
throw more
no,
light. I'm
really,
interested.
what that book is about is how we have made things easier in school, how
Yeah.
we are taking away what is truly education and replacing it with standardized testing. And as a
Yeah.
result,
True.
students are not learning how to think, and they're just
Wow.
learning how to take a test. And so it is brilliant,
Wow.
and I
Wow.
found it to be very true.
Wow. 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 Do you have a PDF?
You know what? I might. I don't know. I had that one hard copy when I read it, but I can look and see if there is a PDF. I'll be happy to send it to you.
Okay. I'm really interested. Thank you very much. So you have to go out to Jasmine.
All right, let's see. Yeah, I have three more listed here. I have to pick two of them.
Yeah.
I will say The Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G.
Mm,
Woodson. Carter G.
mm.
Woodson is the reason why we have Black History Month in the United States. It started off as Black
Wow.
History Week, and it was introduced
Wow.
by him. It was expanded into Black History Month. And this is just a really good book that talks about where a lot of beliefs among Black Americans came from and how a lot
Wow.
of those beliefs were problematic. And I think that it's a really good
Wow.
read.
Wow.
And finally, my number
Mm.
10, which I don't know, we might have miscounted, but I will count this as 10.
I got.
Born a Crime by Trevor Noah. It is hilarious. Trevor
Oh.
Noah, the comedian from South Africa. It is so
Wow.
funny, but in the
Wow.
same paragraph that it might be so funny that it makes you cry laughing, it will flip and make you cry from sadness. I mean, he is an
Ah.
incredible storyteller, and he really yanks and pulls at your emotions. And so reading the book is like a roller coaster. And
Wow.
as brilliant as he is, if you've ever seen him on television or listened to his stand up, we actually saw him in person in New Orleans on stage. But Born a Crime is certainly a must read. So, yes, that's my list.
Wow. You said I mistrust you. So it seems you have one left. What would be the extra one?
I think
Or to
so.
just
No, I think so. Let me see. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine. Yeah, yeah. So I think I have one left.
yeah.
So that one would be Stamped from the Beginning by Ibram X. Kendi. And
Wow.
it reminds me also a lot of the people's history of the United States. It just gives a very comprehensive history of the US, but it goes into some topics that, of course, Howard Zinn did not and could not address. And it really ties in a lot of pop culture and where these things that we view as just, things like songs
Yeah.
or movies,
Yeah.
how there was very racist themes sewn into that, or how those things were put out so that we could think a certain way, really as propaganda.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a brilliant book. It
Wow.
is brilliant. It was made
Wow.
very popular during BLM, George Floyd, when all of that was really hot. And that is when a lot of people started to read Ibram X. Kendi. And so my husband and I read it together and we would discuss it
Wow.
every night. And it was really an eye opening and enjoyable piece of work. So, yes, those
Wow.
are my 10.
Wow. 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 Author Jasmine, you're so amazing. Like
Thank you.
you passed for a room full of books. Like I was engrossed the entire time. Like your depth, your horizon, you're so good, and you'll be a great asset so far the global book readers team is concerned. Thank you very much for
Thank
being a reader and choosing
you.
to stay a lifelong learner. We do appreciate your kind effort for bringing on the golden pen and staying honest to being a lifelong learner. We do appreciate you for that. Thank you very much for choosing
My
to be a reader.
pleasure. Thank you. We try to
Wow.
instill that in our children too. We whenever I was pregnant, we would read to my stomach so that
Wow.
our daughters
Wow.
would understand the rhythm of reading and what that sounds like before
Are
they even
you
came into the
serious?
world.
Wow.
Yes, and now they both love to read. They both are always with a
Wow.
book in their hand. So yes.
You're
That
the
was
sweetest
very
thing I've heard today. You're the sweetest thing I've heard today.
that was very important to us. So yeah.
So that's it for today. Like, it's so amazing. Well, since it's World Book Day and we are keeping it a festivity, what would you have to
Mm.
say about the importance of written words and the significance of reading as a person, as a global community? How can reading help carve a new niche for everyone?
I truly believe, and there is an author whose name fails me right now. I can't think of his name right now, but he said this. He said that the one who controls the language controls the culture. And
True.
the best
True.
way
Sorry.
for,
Sorry. In Africa, sorry to cut you short. In
oh
Africa,
no.
we say if you speak, sorry. In Africa, we say if you speak in a language you understand, you be talking to his heart. But if you speak in a strange language like English, you be talking to his head. Sorry to cut you in. I'd like you
Mhm.
to go on.
Yes, indeed. And so, the best way for us to understand our language is to read it and to write it. And to read it in, its old form, its new form, to read fiction, nonfiction, to read facts, to read for fun, so that we can really understand rhetoric and language and different styles, so that then whenever someone is telling us something, or they're trying to convince us of something, or we're trying to convince someone else of something, or we want to affect change, everything comes down to the written word. The pen is mightier than the sword. And so
True.
if we decide that we're not going to read and we're not going to write, then what we're doing is giving our power away. And I
Wow.
think that there are a lot of people these days who are willing to do that. They would rather write a paper, quote unquote, with AI. They would rather not read a book at all because it's long or
Nope.
because it's boring, and they complain. And when
Yeah.
when that happens, you are losing your understanding of your own
Yeah.
language, and you're giving the power to the people who are willing to do the reading and who are willing to do the writing. And we also lose our creativity when we
Yeah.
refuse to read and write. And so,
Wow.
I just wish that people would recognize what people had to go through for us to even be able to read and write, especially if you're an American, because
Yeah.
when our ancestors were transported from Africa to this land against their will, everything was taken away from them, and everything
Yeah.
being their language. And so Black
Yeah.
people had to combine languages and figure out a way to communicate. And for the longest time, it was illegal to be able
Yeah.
to read and write. And so, if that's
Wow.
not enough of a motivation, I don't know what is. The very fact that people fought and died so that you can be able to do this. So
Read.
that should be
Wow.
reason enough, you know. And for
Yeah.
women didn't have the power to do so.
Yeah.
For a long time
Yeah.
in this country, women could not go get an education. In this country, women couldn't open a bank account by themselves in this country for a very
Wow.
long time. And so the fact that now
Wow.
we have these opportunities, it is just paying homage to our ancestors to take advantage of these opportunities and to do it the best that we can, which means that we need to be reading and
Wow.
we need to be writing and we need to be taking advantage of these gifts for the
Wow.
betterment of ourselves and the people around
Wow.
us and our communities and the world. Because when you can read and write, people listen to you. That's
Yeah.
just the
Wow.
reality. If you
Wow.
can write and if you can get on stage and you can speak and you can say what it is that will cut to somebody's heart, that is when you can affect some change. And the best way to be
Wow.
able to do that is to understand language and how it works and to
Wow.
understand history. And you do that by reading anything that you can get your hands on. And it just opens your world to new perspectives and
Mm.
ideas and cultures. And
Mm.
it's just so
Mm.
vast. But when you decide not to do that, you are just limiting
Mm.
yourself. We don't want to limit ourselves.
Wow.
We want to be everything we're put here to be.
Wow. 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 Author Jasmine. I'm so engrossed. Like, I'm engrossed. Thank you very much for this insight.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
for
You're
having me, and
amazing.
thank you for this podcast. I think this is beautiful what
Yeah.
you're doing. It is beautiful what you're doing with this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much for sharing your knowledge, your experience, your fine mind. And thank you for sparing all of this intricacies and every other stuff you're supposed to do to be on this podcast. I do appreciate your fine mind.
Thank
But
you so much.
before you go, what would be your last word, being that you're a grief expert?
Well, I can't say
What
I'm
would
a
be your
grief
last word to someone who
expert.
is going through stuff? To a
I
student?
can't say that I'm an expert on grief, but I will say that
Well, you
there's
could pass for some, you could pass for a grief expert because you experience, you go through it, and you're a leader because you are going to show us how you did it, and you did it. You did the thing when you wrote the book about it.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
for me, the that was therapy, exactly like you said earlier. Being
Yeah.
able to revisit the good times, to revisit the times that were extremely hard, and to do it in writing, which really slows time down. You know, you have to slow down when you write, and you have to think through it, and you have to face it. And I just think that that is what grief is about. You have to face it. There's
Yeah.
no two ways around it. It's going to hurt. It's going to be terrible. Something like 100,000 to 150,000 people die each day, which
Wow.
means that there are people around us who are always hurting from
Yeah.
fresh grief. And what is
Wow.
important for us to do is to one, have empathy with each other, two, support each other, but three,
Yeah.
find healthy ways to express that pain because there are so many unhealthy ways. And so healthy ways to express that pain can make such a difference. And for me, it was writing. It was writing that book. And now that book will live on forever. And
Mm.
people can go back and they can read it when they want to remember my dad. If my daughters want to read it, if one day I have grandchildren, they can know their grandfather through that book. The people
Mm.
who knew him and the people who never got to meet him. You know, to me, it is a way to keep him alive. And I think that that's what we all want for the people that we love who have passed on. We want a way to keep their memory alive. And this is the way that I was
Yeah.
able to do that. And it just really, I feel a real connection with my dad through that piece of writing.
Wow, wow. Dr. Jasmine, thank you very much. Thank you so very much for sharing your time with us on this podcast. We do appreciate you.
It has been a highlight, the highlight of my day. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Dr. Jasmine. Thank you very, very much. We appreciate you.
All right, you take care.
Yeah, thank you. Well, if you're going to be streaming this, we've been on to amazing author Jasmine. And author Jasmine will surely pass for a room full of books. Like, man, I've been so engrossed the entire time. And I'm so humbled with that depth of knowledge I experience and the way she speaks. So I'm sure that this episode will pique your interest to look up Auto Jasmine book on Amazon. And I'm sure Auto Jasmine, you're a social media person and a reader can connect with you on social media platform. I'm sure.
Yeah, on Instagram, it is at Jasmine Loves Stories. So JasmineLovesStories. Instagram, Jasmine Loves Stories. And I haven't been on my TikTok in a long time, but my YouTube is the same. Jasmine Love Stories. So yeah, you go there. You can find me on Instagram and on YouTube and on Facebook under Jasmine Cochran, Cochran.
Author Jasmine Cochran. Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being on the One Student, One Book, One Author mantra. We look forward to have you on our Zoom meet and greet on our webinars. And during this reading campaign, we are hoping that you'll be on the front line, advancing every global student and person to read their way up. Well, it has been your host, Smart Steward Udo, and we look forward to have Otto Jasmine on our festivity. Thank you very much, Otto. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. We appreciate you.
That will be awesome. Thank you so much. Bye.
Uh, bye, bye, bye.